everyone. Thank you so much for coming and attending mine and Anshuman's talk for 45 minutes. We really hope that you guys are going to get some really practical tips from us. I'm Travena Addenbrooke, and I'm the Gen AI marketing lead at Spark.
And I'm Anshuman Banerjee. I lead the AI and engineering tribe and chapter area at Spark. And today, we'll talk to you about our learnings of doing AI at Spark for the last X number of years. So we'll talk a little bit about, there have been success stories, but as part of it, there have been failures as well. And we'll be open in terms of where we succeeded, where we failed, and hopefully by the end of this session, you'll get an idea about what works, what does not work, what to think about as you embark on the journey on AI, or onto your further projects on AI. So very happy to impart our learnings as part of today's session. Oops. OK, so discussion today. We'll talk a little bit about how we started our journey on AI, and then we'll talk about 3 things that we think you can take away from this session. And there are many more things, actually, to talk about, but we kind of try to boil it down to 3, because 3 is something that you can potentially take back and remember from this discussion. So our journey on AI. Now, it started about 10 years back when we started our first project around AI. And interestingly, the way it started was not from leadership. It was not leadership coming in and asking our teams that, what can you do with AI? It was very different for us. The way it started was with an employee in our data team, and they asked this intelligent question, right? Because some of these people have so much thinking and et cetera going on in their minds. Somebody asking us we have so much data at Spark, and this data is about customers, it's about our products, it's about the entire ecosystem around Spark. So why were we not doing something which is more predictive, right? Why were we not doing AI? And that was a question that got asked. And I believe these questions get asked by people who are practitioners at different levels. But a lot of time, leaders don't pay attention to these questions. What happened at Spark was a bit different, where our leader, they came in and said, OK, let's give it a try, because this is upcoming, something coming up. Why don't we give it a shot? And this is something about leadership, I believe, and which I try to imbibe in my ways of working, that ideas can come from anywhere. It's important to understand the trends, the market, where things are heading, and to promote some of these people and some of these kinds of work that our teams are asking. Now, we had legacy data warehouses. We were nowhere there in terms of a great, ready to start doing AI. We did not have any data science skills. In fact, 10 years back, data science was not even something people knew about. But what we had was a small team who was very passionate about it. And we brought in those people who were highly passionate about doing something new, and we gave them the task of creating something. It took the team 9 months to create the first model. And I remember those days, we had an on-site offshore team, and there were almost 8 to 9 experiments which were happening every day to see what we can do. And the problem statement for us, the first problem statement we had was about how do we reduce churn for our prepaid customers, early prepaid churn, because 30% of prepaid customers typically churn in the first month. That was the problem statement. It was continuous. It was a lot of pain in terms of work, but I think when you go through these situations where you have an initial pain, you get started onto something good, is what I've seen. But it then took another 3 months to convince business owners to accept that product and actually to use it. And we'll talk a lot about it as part of our discussion today in terms of the importance of thinking about adoption from day one, because these are applications and products that we create, and a lot of times we see failures happening during the adoption phase. Over time, we have moved on to creating things like data products. As a data team in an organization like Spark, and probably new organizations as well, data starts off with reporting. But reports are retrospective, right? You look back at what has happened, and you report on them. We started on that journey of machine learning modeling with churn, as I mentioned, with upsell, cross-sell. How do we sell a new product to a customer? How do you move them up to a higher product? But we soon realized it's very difficult for business to consume this information because churn or upsell, cross-sell, what you generate is lists. And business does not know actually how to use lists properly. So we moved on to these things called data products. And this is what we have been working on for the last 6, 7 years, which is creating data products. Now, data products effectively are applications. And these are applications with very simple, intuitive user experiences or user interfaces, where a lot of the complexity of models lies underneath at the application layer, so that as a user, one does not need to be conversant with the data. They don't need to know it's a data product. An example of it in real life is something like a Netflix or a Spotify. There's lots of algorithms happening underlying it, but what comes up is a simple user interface where you can easily use it. You don't need to learn how to use these applications, and that's what we've been creating for the last few years at Spark. An example of it is in our SME area, small and medium enterprises. We have this application where leads are shown on a map with clear identification to say, OK, this is the discussion that you need to have with this particular lead, rather than we could have done it by offering a list to our business hubs, but we are not doing that. We are making it more intuitive, user-friendly for our users to be able to use. And Trav will tell you a bit more about some of these things as well.
So then we started to say, this is cool, 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 right? The machine learning's working, and it's giving us our competitive advantage. But what we really wanted to do is drive that long-term business growth, right? And that's where we really started to look into predictiveness. Predictiveness allowed us the opportunity to try and simulate, I suppose, in some parts, as well as kind of give better data direction for the business. So some of the things that we started to do was take those lists that Anshuman was talking about, put it into some ad tech and some martech, and then we started to look and say, hey, these groups of people who have a higher score number or the propensity to churn, let's go show them some brand content. Let's show them some other content that might help them see value in being with Spark. So we were really quite happy with that, and we were thinking we were pretty slick, and we were thinking, oh my God, this is great. We are totally those people who are building that competitive moat. And then we had the moment where generative AI just kind of blasted into our ecosystem. And I remember looking at Anshuman going, that moat has just started to dry up, mate. And we really started to go, this has amazing opportunities to it. But also, too, it was starting to erode what we had started to build, really. Because essentially what generative AI, right at the start, 18 months ago, cast your mind back, it was pretty much, it could go through many different types of data sources, but just think about it like they could be going through video, it could be going through Excel sheets, PDFs, all of those different things, and then it could kind of combine the information and then send it back to you in a way that was really easy for anyone to consume. So a lot of the interfaces and things like that we were starting to see had more like Google search chat views and things like that. So for us, that was really, really cool. We thought, this is great. We should leverage this. And one of the first user cases that we really sprinted on was thinking about our customers. We really wanted to make sure the customers were being serviced in a way that we could really drive value towards them so they were less likely to churn from us. So one of the first user cases that we pulled together was sitting there going, we've got amazing store staff and we've got amazing call center teams. And part of the problem is that they have to go through quite a lot of documentation to find an answer for something. So you can imagine how many complaints or how many different challenges that they have when they're calling you or walking into the store. So using generative AI, we were allowed to use all these different sources, whether they were being PDFs, whether they were videos, whether they were terms and condition sheets, you name it. We could all put it into essentially like a container. And we could have a search function over the front to really help our frontline staff deliver better back to our customers. And so we felt like we were really moving somewhere with that.
And now, what we've realized is that, when generative AI came along, as Trav mentioned, it was an aha moment, right? But then we had achieved a level of expertise on predictive AI. And then we kind of started from scratch again when generative AI came along. Now, after settling down in generative AI for a bit of time, because we've been doing multiple projects, as Trav was mentioning, we've realized this zone where you can actually use both. And we are now creating these applications which are the combination of generative and predictive AI and structured and unstructured data. If you look at generative AI, a lot of it is about unstructured data, while we were quite good in terms of doing stuff with structured data, which is structured data is more about data in tables, columns, etc. Now, we are bringing them together as part of Spark's own internal employee GPT that we are putting together, where you can not only search for unstructured information, like information from intranet, right? Or information from documents like contracts, et cetera, but we are also exposing it to structured data, like how much revenue are we making today? What's the trend of our revenue? These are stuff or information coming in from structured tables, but we are exposing it via this medium, via this distribution channel within Spark, which is this employee chat interface. And that's, to me, one of the things that we're thinking about is about creating ability to do chains of thought, which is an employee can follow through a chain of thought of multiple different questions without needing to leave that one interface.
We then started to see that, like, if you're making these products, like, think back a couple of years ago when we were just in machine learning. What we were starting to understand was actually adoption played a really huge part in making sure that it was driving back business value. There's no point having this great, shiny new toy and no one's playing with it and no one's driving any business value out of it. So what I personally started to think, what do we need to do here? So we definitely started to talk to the business about why. Why do you need these data products? You don't need to build them if you don't have a big team of Anshumans. You can buy them in as well. And so what's really important is that you're really clear about why. Why is the business going on this transformation? Why is the business thinking about AI? Why is the business talking and interacting with generative AI? What's the value it's giving your business? We then needed to talk around our people, right? Like, there's still a lot of fear with people. They still don't trust the systems, or they're still really worried that it's going to take over their jobs and things like that. So as leaders in this room, you really need to start talking to your people and explaining why your business is going on this transformation, or why they're starting and getting off the starting line with it. The next part is your customer. Let's be fair, we're all in business, right? So you're either selling a product or you're selling a service. That's business. And it's really, really important for you to ensure that whatever you're putting out and whatever you're doing internally, using the data, all of that kind of stuff, you're making sure that it's absolutely benefiting the customer, right? So you can do some really amazing smart stuff. You can have some really sophisticated data, maybe some really sensitive data, and you can do some really cool stuff. But is that benefiting your customer directly or indirectly? So one of the things that I had just recently, actually, was that Anshuman's team made this amazing product for my performance team. And about 2 months later, Anshuman came knocking on my door and was pretty much like, girl, I spent all that time, I did this for you, and then now it's not really getting used and it's not getting adopted. And I actually had to stop and think, really? But it's so cool, and I really like it, and the team seemed really buzzed about it. So I went downstairs and I had a bit of a chat to the guys, and I was like, what's happening? And pretty much they turned around and they were like, Trav, I really don't know why we want to use this. Like, isn't that good enough? And so I realized right then and there that I hadn't even done the whys. Like, I hadn't told them why for the business. I hadn't told it what was in it for them and why I thought it would be important for them to use it. And I definitely didn't explain how we thought it could be adopted in other areas of the business to then join up with some customer stuff. So it's really important as leaders that you start to think about your why.
Absolutely. And so we'll talk about these 3 key learnings, as we were mentioning at the very beginning. The first is the focus on launching the data product. The second is on dedicating time to get the product adopted by users. And the third is measure and communicate that incremental value. So these are our theme of the discussion will float around these 3 areas. And let's move on to the first one, which is the focus on launching the data product, and then planning for scale later. And there's a reason to it, because launching, and we're not saying creating the product, it's about launching the product.
So launching the product is really important. It doesn't need to be perfect. So if you're a perfectionist, this is not for you. You need to be able to kind of put it together with a little bit of sellotape and maybe have some imagination with it. But what you're kind of trying to do is excite the people in your business around it. Now, that's not to say that you forget about all the other steps to actually make it come true, but definitely start and get off the starting line. It's really paralyzing at the moment with the amount of tools that you can buy, you can build, all of that kind of stuff. The main thing is just getting off the starting line.
And focusing on launch means that you avoid getting into this endless loop of proof of concepts. I don't know how many of you have gone through this phase of moving from proof of concept 1 to POC 2 to POC 3, and then not launching something which is tangible enough for business to use and then create value with it. Now, I see there are values in terms of creating proof of concepts, and we create proof of concepts sometimes to our own peril because it generates so much interest and so much expectation. Then you are kind of on the back foot trying to deliver. I don't like to be in that position. But yeah, I think it's really important to think about, what will be your first launch, and then go in with an imperfect product, not finalized, and then launch that product.
Ensure everyone's around the table. And this is really, really important. You need the feedback. You can't allow data builders and things like that to run off on you. You need everyone around the table. And another thing that I like to talk about being around the table is be really deliberate with your language. If I asked all of you guys to imagine a house on a hill, in your head, you're all picturing a house on a hill. Mine's pink, got a blue door, and slightly to the left because I don't like the wind. Now, everyone in this room has their picture of their house on the hill, but it's slightly different. Yours will be white, it might have a green roof, and so on and so on. So what I found by working with Anshuman's team and really going through these early MVPs is you have to get really deliberate with your language, and you have to really make sure you're painting the picture together so everyone understands what does the MVP look like, walk like, and talk like. And then when you get into the production of it, what do you expect it to do?
And then keep a focus which is about the outcome. What do you really want to arrive at? What is it that causes business value? Right? And sometimes to be able to launch a product, one needs to do hacks, and I think hacks are perfectly okay. Because if you're going for a perfect product, it might take a long, long time for you to reach there, and there's no need to create a perfect product on day one. And especially when you look at AI, and there's something which is about training and refinement which goes into an AI product. If you look at gaming, for example, they are shipping games which are imperfect, which have got bugs in them, and a little amount of bugs, but something which creates an outcome is really important. And hacks to arrive at these kind of solutions are okay, and we continuously do these kind of trade-offs and choices to be able to meet our timelines and launch something on the ground. At the same time, to be able to work in this area of AI, what we realized is that we can't do with the existing teams that we had, and we had to evolve our teams both within and across the business. Just pull it up. Now, on the data side of things, which is on the left of your screen, to deliver tangible outcomes in data and AI, we brought in people who had a different skill set compared to the traditional analytics skill set in data. Of course, we needed to have data scientists that I'm not even talking about, but data intelligence. Data intelligence for us is a group of people who have experience in business and who love working with data. And we brought these people in specifically and created the group because they could have those conversations with business in terms of what's the business problem we are trying to solve and why should they invest in that particular product. So these are kind of business consultants in our area. Data application engineers, I mentioned about data products and the UI, UX, and understanding customer experiences. How does this product flow into the life of a customer in their day of life was extremely important. Data application engineers are people with UI, UX backgrounds, and who can then create that, they have React and other skills to be able to create that data product or the outline of it, which helps people to use these applications better. And then as we have moved on to the journey, in our journey moved on to cloud, we have brought in cloud data engineers, people with experience in cloud, but who want to work with data and have got data expertise. So the point I'm trying to make is that there's so much happening in the field of AI that we can't be static. We can't be static and say, this is the team and they have to do everything. We need to evolve with the times as the field is changing, and it was important for us to create these roles in the data area.
From the business side, we needed to kind of think about what we were using in these models and using within the tools that we either built or we bought in. And what we decided is that we wanted to really make sure that there was advocates in each area of our business unit. So some in sales, some in marketing, some in finance. And those looked like privacy and security champions. And so a good example of that is that one of my teams wanted to bring TikTok internal. And what they could do is, instead of waiting in line for like our one privacy assessor, what they could do is pretty much stand up and walk 4 meters to the marketer who's been trained in privacy and security. And they could start talking to them about, hey, I want to bring in this tool and I want to do it direct, and what do you think the challenges are? And they're given these frameworks and questionnaires and things like that to try and draw out all the right information, so that when they start putting together, hey, this is what we want to do and this is why, they actually are also too talking about the security risks, they're already talking about the privacy risks, and actually starting to also to solution for any challenges that they have in that space. The front runners, I can't emphasize these enough. Like, if you're working with data teams, having front runners is so important. What they provide for the business is the opportunity to give good, great, amazing feedback to the builders, right? So as they're using it, as they're breaking it, as they're having challenges with it, it gives them the opportunity to feed back to the team who's building it and make sure that there's iteration after iteration. You need 2 types of personalities for these front runners. You need the geek who will sit there and absolutely try and break it. And then you need probably the more extrovert, the more, I suppose, influencer as such. And they can start helping the adoption curve of the product as it starts to become something that you want to deploy throughout the business. They are high users, they know all about it. It means that they can just rock up to anyone's desk who's having a problem with it and actually help sort them out. So it really helps with that adoption piece. Recently, in the last 12 months, because Spark is a really large company, we've put together an AI ambassador team, and they are pretty much leaders within different areas, whether it's from sales, whether it's from marketing, whether it's from finance, and they all meet every 2 weeks. And what we discuss is Anshuman's backlog, right? We're starting to look at what products is he building, how far is the maturity of the products that we've built going, and where they're at, and are they hitting their return on investment and things like that. We then have another stream of work that we look at for the paid tools, right? So we can't have different rules for Anshuman's products versus the tools that we've brought in. And so we talk about what we've actually brought in, how it's going with adoption, and share learnings and tips and tricks between the teams. And we've really found that's absolutely tried to connect our business up a lot more.
I think, just to add to what Trav was saying, I think by nature, companies like Spark, they're more conservative compared to the AI companies who are creating these products. So unless we proactively think about these structures like privacy and security champions, this was essential for us to move from a very highly conservative point of thinking, view of thinking, to something which is a bit more open. And it takes time, but it's important to start these journeys in parallel alongside the technical parts, because otherwise it's very difficult to launch these products and create something tangible which creates value in the business.
So now that you're moving past the MVP, the POCs, and all the rest of it, if you're into scaling, that's amazing, right? Because absolutely you're driving back that return on investment. And so getting to that point is a real accomplishment, and you need to celebrate that. The next part that is really important is looking at your different risk management approaches. And like, I talk about this because it wasn't that long ago where there was a group of marketers that we pulled together, and we gave them some tools where they could actually like prompt to text, and they could prompt to image, and they could prompt to make some jingles. Like, we made some really mad stuff. Wasn't really on brand, but it was really good to have a little play with, right? And what we did is, once we started doing that for a couple of weeks, we realized, actually, what should we do with this now? And we realized that we didn't have the guards in around it. So as a brand, were we happy for a synthetic person to be jumping with an iPhone and smiling? You know, like, we were like, probably not. That's probably not what our customers expect from us. Were we okay with synthetic voices, you know, making our radio ads, or like turning things into podcasts and things like that? So what I'm saying is that you need to make it appropriate for your business, and specifically your area. So the AI principles that we've built for Spark and marketing is definitely built off the ethos of the main principles Spark have, but it's really starting to get specifically into the user cases of how people will use generative AI.
So focusing on operations is important, but I would just put a caveat on it, which is that sometimes we complicate things by thinking about risk too much, even before we have created something. I think the first thing is you only have risk when you have put something together and put something out there. Right? And there are different levels of risk for different types of product. There are products which one can create which will always have a human in the loop. Like I will create the first draft of an email, right? Or first draft of a marketing copy. Somebody will look at it. The degree of risk management in such cases is relatively low because chances of it going wrong are not too high. But if it's something customer facing, right, then we need to talk about risk and look at it in more granularity, but that might not be the first project, right, that you take up. But as you scale, it becomes important to think about large language model operations because you need to be able to trace the behavior of your LLMs from the time you give it a prompt, right, and you want to trace it in terms of how that prompt is getting manifested, how is it responding back, and then you can trace things like hallucinations, for example, right? What's the score or degree of hallucination that's happening? What's the latency? How much time is it taking from the question to the time the response is coming back? How relevant is the response? So these are specific scores which you can then create to be able to trace these things and being on top of these things. But think of these as you scale. These are not day one things to think about and worry about. And bringing in operational focus on data quality. Now, we all have used structured data, which is data on tables. And I think everyone will say yes to the fact that we still have problems on data quality, right? Now, what's happening now is this new kind of data, which is unstructured data, things which is in documents, contracts, SharePoint, intranet, and other things which are coming in. Recently, I had this use case about we wanted to put in information about Spark's products to our internal employee chatbot. And all of the information we thought was in SharePoint, and we created something to be able to extract that information. When we did that, we found that it's only 30% of the information is actually there. The rest 70% is not even there. And we did not know, because no one really audits and looks into these kind of data, or has not been doing that till we had this large language models who could interrogate this kind of information. But now that we can, it becomes extremely important to look at data quality for these kinds of data. Now, we are thinking of making it mandatory for some of our product managers, that they should be updating information about product information in SharePoint, and we need to create processes around this. These are ongoing discussions, not at Spark as well. As we mentioned in the very beginning, we are learning as we are doing. We don't have all the answers, and yeah, we'll figure out as we go. Moving on to the adoption part of things, dedicating time towards adoption. Now, change is not easy, and we've talked about three things, these three key learnings, right? The first learning is launch the product. The third one is measure value from that product. If I look at it, both of these are technical outcomes. Both of these, in my mind, these are mathematical outcomes. A technical outcome can be achieved. But what lies between launching the product and measuring the business values generating is that middle layer, which is adoption. Because people need to use that product for us to generate value. And that is non-mathematical. That is people. And it's the only non-mathematical factor, which I don't have a clear answer to. But we'll talk about it and say what we have done. Now, our learning is that adoption does not happen even if the product is an excellent product. And this, as a technical person, my view was if I create something which is an awesome product, and people will understand that it's value adding for them, and they will flock to it, and the product will be successful. It doesn't happen, right? It just doesn't happen that way. You need to have an ecosystem and help around it. The other thing is that sometimes leaders fail to appreciate AI outcomes. And I'll make a distinction here between an AI product and an IT product. An IT product is something which is purely fact-based, right? It is, I need to do an SAP implementation or a CRM implementation. You know what the starting point is. You know what the end point is. In the world of IT, there's something which is about training and refinement. On day one, when you launch the product, it's not likely to be awesome. It's likely to have errors and a lot of mistakes in it, which is not able to do. But there's this world which is similar to, or we talk about in the field of AI, which is training. And that happens on the product. It learns, or it can learn over time. These errors will reduce going forward. But in large organizations, maybe, what comes up is, OK, this product does not work because it's not giving me the answer properly. And this kind of mindset sometimes causes people to lose motivation and hope, but that's the wrong kind of question for an IT product, because it develops over time. It gets better, it learns, and then it refines itself. So we've learned not to underestimate the challenges of adoption. And as I mentioned, we created, from a data perspective, we brought in people who could talk that business language, the data intelligence team.
And what I found for the last couple of years is it's super easy to get the technology and everything else going, but it's super hard to get people to put it into their processes and put it into their daily. And what we found by, I suppose, explaining to people that the maturity of the product builds with you, the more and more you use it, the more and more you give feedback, the more it actually advances with you. And so that's quite hard to teach people because they just don't get it. They're like, well, shouldn't it just work straight away, Trav? And it's taking the time to actually explain to them just what Anshuman was talking about. It gets better and gets better and it gets better and it gets better. Just keep with it and keep going. Creating feedback loops was really, really important to build the trust, right? Like, so if you're sitting there with your front runner squads and you're saying, hey, here's a product, you guys have helped developing it, they need to know that their feedback is absolutely being looked at and actioned. And if you can't action it for a reason, you need to give the feedback back to the person who's provided it so that they feel like they're heard and they're like, yeah, that's cool, okay, I get that, and then they can move on. Creating training material, I think, has been such a big learning curve over the last 3 years. A few times we just thought, oh, we'll just have a lunch and learn, get some pizzas out, grab some beers, show them what to do, and they'll be right. And what we started to realise really quickly is that wasn't okay. And what we were finding is that we'd have a flurry of use of these tools. And then after about 2 months, the use of them absolutely dropped off. So we started to get a little bit creative and we started to talk to people around the business who are high users and say, what do you think we need to do? And a lot of them said it's about continually talking about it, Trav. It's about creating training material that's actually interesting. And so we came up with Sparkle, and she's like this AI avatar. She talks. She's got a rule. She's not allowed to talk for more than 3 minutes. So the videos are only 3 minutes or under. And we started to do these things to trial to see if we can really help our teams and educate them in a different way. We use it for the tools. We've used it to just let them understand the changes that are happening across the business with things. We also too have just done the basics of generative AI. We've got one that's a 3-minute video on what do all of these terms mean. So I think it's important to do a range of material for people who are just starting off all the way through to your advanced users. And it goes without saying, you guys are all leaders in this room, so I won't hammer the point, but definitely being consistent with communication is key. Just doing it once and thinking that everyone's got it is not good enough. You need to go and go and go, and you need to be really transparent. You need to be transparent. It says on there just for the wins, but it's actually also too for the losses. Celebrate the failures, because if you failed, it means you got off the starting line. That's better than just being frozen at the starting line. So I really hope that you guys can just hammer that home to your teams about being consistent in your communication about the whys, being consistent about the training material, giving them a whole lot of different, different materials, and then also to allowing them to feedback on the product and help that maturity curve go.
One of the things that we also do is we bring in the top 10 users of any of our data products to get feedback from them. And the idea is that people who are the top users of a product, they would have found bugs earlier than others. So the idea is to find those bugs before everyone else finds it and to fix them. And sometimes what we do is we put one of these people up to say, OK, look at this person. He or she is the top 10 user or top user of this product. And recently, interesting thing happened, which is the top user, they did not want to be named in our intranet. And we were surprised and asked the question as to why. And what came back is that the amount of work that she used to get done in 4 hours, she can now get it done in half an hour. And in her mind, she feels that she's cheating, right? Which was a revelation for us. I mean, we did not think of it that way. And these are interesting anecdotes which come up. So we have now asked our leaders to have communications with our people to talk about, from a leadership perspective, we want people to cheat that way, right? Because this is productivity. But we did not know that people are thinking in a particular fashion.
Measurement, the big one, we get asked this all the time, and I think it's, look, I don't think it's a one silver bullet for everyone, but this is something that, that we use. And this has been developed to pretty much give an even playing field, for lack of a better description, across the paid and the built work. So what we do is we sit there and we go through this flywheel and we sit and put different KPIs that relate to the business. Don't make up KPIs that are for the tool. Make up KPIs that are for your business. So therefore, you know you're moving business KPIs through. So revenue, cost, obviously, and customer satisfaction scores, those are pretty self-explanatory. The A/B testing one has been really interesting for me. Maybe about 11 months ago, there was a tool that I wanted to bring in, and what we did is we put it through an A/B test, and it was promising everything. It was, you know, like, it's going to increase your return on investment for ad spend, Travena, by 35%, and all of these other things. And I was like, this is gold, this is cool, I really want this. And what we did is we actually brought it in, and we said, we're going to do a proof of concept with you guys, and we're going to have a team who use it and a team who don't. So therefore, we're really tracking if your product is going to give us the lift that you're promising. And what came from that is that we didn't take the product. But what we realized by going through that is how valuable it is to have those type of A/B tests going on, and to make sure that what you are bringing in is actually suitable and is going to bring the delivery that it's promised. I think another one that's really interesting on this flywheel is the user engagement. User engagement across different areas of the business means different things. So I think it's really important that when you're building this flywheel and you're starting to put in business KPIs and targets over the first 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, and so on, that you're really starting to look at what does it mean for our people? How will we know that they are enjoying the use of it? How will we know if they're cheating and getting back some hours? All of those things are really, really important to put in there. Another part is the quality of the output. I think there's been a lot of speakers today who have talked about this. When you're bringing in a tool, make sure that there's some real transparency on what's under and in that black box so that you can understand the quality of what's coming out. It could start off really well and then start to deprecate down. So you need to know which levers to pull and what data you need to put into it to make it go back up again. And then start looking at, like, what does the quality benchmark need to be at month 6, month 12, and month 18.
And we measured success against some tangible business metrics. And initially, when we started on this journey as a data team, we wanted to prove the value of data and AI. And for a company like Spark, even if we did not do AI, the company will still roll, right? And it will still keep on making money. Maybe not for a long while, but I think the idea was, can we prove, right? What's the incremental value that AI is generating for the organization so that we continue to get investments from the organization, right? Because there are competing investments all of the time. So the first, initially, what we did was we created our own metrics, and and then we talked about these metrics in forums to say, this is the value we are generating. But there are so many projects running in the organization that it's difficult to pinpoint the value to this particular initiative or project. So what we have done now is we agree with finance partners of the different business areas upfront in terms of how would we calculate value for this initiative. And sometimes it's about creating control groups. For example, you don't target a particular group, keep them aside and measure the difference with the control group. Sometimes it's about seasonality, or sometimes it's about a new project coming in and what's the incremental value. But these discussions today at Spark, they happen in Q1, which is early in the life cycle of a project. And then we want to lock it in to say, this is how we'll measure value for AI initiatives. Measuring incremental gross margin is very important for us because we want to show in-year value creation at Spark. And we try to boil down many different types of metrics, boil it down finally to a gross margin number in terms of what's the value that is getting created. Now, there are some projects which are really long cycle. For example, we use AI to identify where would we put the next 5G tower. That investment does not have returns for a long time, right? But these are NPV, net present value-based calculations, but otherwise, everything else gets boiled down to a gross margin impact, which can be from cost or revenue. We then have measurement dashboards, which are created, and these measurement dashboards have calculations based on agreed logic between finance partners. So the finance partner from data has agreed with finance partners from, let's say, B2B sales or B2C marketing, that this is how value from AI initiative will get measured, and those are then shown in a dashboard. And that dashboard is available for everyone to see. It's clearly visible, it's agreed logic, and business owners have signed up to that particular logic. One thing to note in these scenarios is sometimes data can come across as a competitor to business teams. For example, did this lead come through data, or did this lead come through my human, right? Now, what we have tried to do is to get into situations where we are seen as enablers. We don't want to take the human away. We want to aid the human to do better, be more productive in their work, because at the end of it, the final sale, et cetera, there's a human component to it. So that's something that you probably need to consider as you scale, that this situation does arise, where who's gets the benefit of these initiatives. And then we come on to the final recap.
So we've got to leave you with some final thoughts before we get into questions. But my final thoughts are around making sure that as leaders, you're sitting there explaining again and again and again, and just for good measure, again, the why for the business, why for the customer, and why for the team. You also too need to make sure that when you're looking at your team members around, and when you're looking at your employment strategy or anything of that nature, you really need to go after those people who have amazing mindsets to experiment. You also too need to be okay with unlearning and learning again, and unlearning again, again, and again. One of the things that definitely I've learnt over the last couple of years at working at Spark and things like that, just when you think you know it, then all of a sudden a cloud of black comes over and you don't know it again. I agreed with a previous speaker before that if anyone's sitting there saying they're the AI guru, they are lying to you. This stuff is moving so fast. We can't keep up. It's impossible for us. There's so many products coming at us all day, every day. So just be okay with that. Be okay to learn, relearn, and then try again. Another one that I think is really important for business leaders to really lean into is ensuring you've got your proof of concept pipeline sorted. So what I mean by that is making sure that your really fast, quick wins are put down and you've got a really good measurement plan on it. But you have to build for some of that long-term success as well. And so by doing that, it really enables you to make sure that you've got a constant line of, profitability, or whatever you've put on your flywheel, go back a couple of slides, whatever you've put on there as your KPI, you've actually delivered a pipeline of that. So you look back in a year's time and it's actually driving value for the business.
And 3 final thoughts from me. The first one is focus on launching the product. The technology is moving really fast. It's easy to think of, we were trying to do this on GPT 3.5, and then it has moved on to 4, so I should use 4 or 4.01 or mini. I think it's good to be clear about why are you doing that initiative, and then as technology changes, let it evolve, but your focus is on the business value for yourself. So don't need to go into the next generation stuff and moving on from POC to POC, but rather create value for your organization. And that's one of our learnings, because otherwise there's too much happening. It's easy to get lost. Plan for adoption actively. I think we've gone through this part where there was an excellent product. At the very beginning, I talked about this product which we created, and then it took 3 months to convince business owners to use it. Excellent products don't get taken up by users because they're excellent. You need to plan for adoption actively. Talk to the people who are going to finally use it. Bring them in the journey early on. And then measure incremental value that this product is generating for the organization. That's extremely important. It's important for you to justify the spend on data and AI. It's important for you to understand as well, how does the value get created through data and AI? And then make it visible across the organization, right? Let everyone know. And if they have issues or contentions with how this is being calculated, let them come back to you and ask that question. Because nothing is perfect. It can be refined. But it's good to put some of these things out there so that it's visible and accessible to the entire organization. It will help you make that case for AI, for future projects. So that's us. Yeah.
I hope you guys enjoyed that and got a little bit of value out of it. Anshuman and I will be out in the foyer if you want to come have a little chat with us. But thank you so much for spending the last 45 minutes with us. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.